Welcome to the Great Basin Prescribed Fire and Smoke Transport Briefing for Friday, February 9th. Over the last 2 weeks, we've seen storms continue to move across the Great Basin, although the storm track has finally shifted further south, mainly targeting the southern half of the Great Basin and also parts of northern Utah and southern Idaho. But you can definitely see over the last couple of weeks more of the drier signature up north in the Pacific Northwest, northwest Nevada and northern California, and a much wetter signature down south. This is definitely more traditional of what we would see during an El Nino winter, and again that pattern has really shifted and looks like it should stay with more of a southern track going through the next few weeks. New snowfall over the last 72 hours. You can see across really all of the Great Basin. We've seen some snow amounts at least some areas in the lower elevations, as well as some heavier snow in the higher elevations. The heaviest snow has definitely been in the Sierra, but also mainly in the central and northern Utah mountains, also parts of southwest Utah, and then somewhat up into central Idaho. The snow depth is indicated on the right, and you can see from the snowpack, many areas of the Great Basin are actually near normal or even just a little bit above normal, especially in Nevada and Utah. And then again, you can see that more traditional El Nino signature with the heavier snowpack over the southern half of the west, and not quite as much snowpack as you go further north into Washington, northern Idaho, and Montana. Parts of southern Idaho are near normal, but really central Idaho is still below normal, along with the Sierra into the higher terrain of western Nevada. However, we will see additions to the snowpack as we go later in February, especially to the southern half of the Great Basin. Our satellite loop from this morning shows a broad trough of low pressure that's impacting much of the west. So we do have colder northerly flow, and you can see that in the cloud pattern driving south into Nevada. So we will see some snow showers continue across portions of Idaho, Nevada, and then eventually into Utah as well today. For later today, again, you see that trough generally moving across the Great Basin, so we will see those lighter snow showers across many areas of the Great Basin, and there are some winter weather advisories in effect for central areas of the Great Basin. But you can see a ridge of high pressure off the west coast, and this will bring at least a temporary break in the weather here going into the weekend and next week. Otherwise, looking at our ventilation index, our dispersion will still be good over the northern portion of Nevada into southern Idaho with those northerly breezy winds. And you can see this on the transport winds, those gusts generally in the 20s or 30s, really across the northern half of Nevada into southern Idaho, and lighter as you go further south and east. Mixing heights will generally be low to moderate. Looking at temperatures, we're generally seeing temperatures probably just below normal across much of the Great Basin, with highs in the 30s and 40s and near 50 degrees in the far south. Relative humidity will still stay elevated as the system continues to move through, so certainly no concerns with fire weather at this time. As we move into the weekend, we will see that ridge build into the west coast. So again, this will start our drying pattern and gradually get into some warmer temperatures next week. Otherwise, dispersion with the north winds on the east side of the ridge, we will see the dispersion improve over southern and eastern Nevada into much of Utah. And you can see that again on the transport winds with those gusty northeast winds. Gusts mainly in the 30s, maybe even low to mid 40s over southern Nevada into western Utah. Otherwise, mixing heights in the moderate range. Temperature Saturday, probably very little change from what we'll see today, and relative humidity also generally staying above 40%. As we move into Sunday, the ridge flattens out a little bit, but still generally drier conditions for much of the Great Basin, but also as that ridge builds in and flattens out, generally lighter winds, so we will be seeing poor dispersion across many areas of the Great Basin. So we could see some inversions starting to set in later this weekend. Transport winds, again under the ridge, remain very light, with generally decreasing mixing heights. So again, expecting some inversions to set up, especially in areas of any new snowfall. Temperatures on Sunday, we will see a gradual warming trend going into Sunday into next week, especially for western areas of the Great Basin, and this will eventually translate further east. Relative humidity remains above 25 or 30%, but certainly has decreased with those drier conditions that are moving in. The 3-day forecast amount of precipitation shows generally light amounts of precipitation almost across the entire Great Basin. Some of the heavier spots, just as these systems move through today, will be over eastern Nevada and into southern and central Utah, with some drier spots being into western Nevada. As we go into next week, that ridge remains across the Great Basin with generally drier and warmer conditions and still lighter winds, so expect those inversions to really start settling in towards early next week. And then on Tuesday, we have some moisture moving across the top of the ridge, so we could see some showers and clouds move into Idaho, possibly even northern Nevada, but generally on the light side, especially as you go further south. And we could see an increase in winds as that weak upper system moves through within that ridge, so we could see dispersion improve just a little bit over northern Nevada. By Wednesday, that moisture remains kind of spilling over the top of the ridge into Idaho, but still drier conditions for much of Nevada and Utah. Although there is a weak trough moving into the northwest coast, so it might kick up some winds and improve some of our air quality conditions and inversions going towards the middle of the week. And then by Thursday, we may see a little bit more moisture move across the northern half of the Great Basin. However, precipitation, this is days 4 and 5 from Monday through Wednesday. Again, just showing some lighter showers spilling across the top of the ridge across Idaho with generally drier conditions for much of Nevada and Utah. And this continues into the end of the week as well. However, you can see off the west coast, we will have some systems moving in, and this will bring an increase in precipitation in the Sierra, possibly later next week, and this will push more precipitation, possibly by next weekend, into the Great Basin. So our 7-day total precipitation, again, much of that is occurring here just through today and tonight. And then looking at the 8 to 14-day outlook, after our nice break in weather here going into the weekend and at least earlier the mid portion of next week, we do expect the wetter pattern to return as we go into the latter half of the month. So again, you can see generally warmer conditions with cooler conditions down south, but really the moisture is definitely more indicative of what we would traditionally see during an El Nino winter, where we're seeing California, the Southwest, and maybe the southern western half of the Great Basin really getting into that well above normal precipitation. So we are expecting several storms to move through during this time period. And then again, as you go further north, generally not quite as heavy precipitation. Again, definitely more of what we would classically see during El Nino, which is again what we have been in here for some time. That concludes our webcast for today. Check back on Monday for the latest updates.